Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Idris Sunusi from INSA Arts and Crafts, coming to you from a lot of places. In this lesson, as I promised in the previous lesson, we're going to talk about the states of love. Or to be more specific really, there are no states in love, but rather our perception of love. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We have the first level, or the first level of perception of love, is perceiving love as a condition of action, or condition of being, etc. And what I mean by that is that this is the first this in this perception of love as a condition of action is, if you love me, you'll do this for me. If you do this, I will love you. You know, and that is the supposition that you can actually give love to someone on command. This is based on the supposition that you could give love to someone on command, that I'm in control of loving someone, that I am in control, I have the choice to love this person, I have the choice to love that person based on what they do to me and what they don't do to me and all that kind of stuff. Well, this is not about, here we're not discussing whether true or not, we're discussing the benefit of each perception as a perception, whether it is true or not. If you possess that, or you choose to look at a circumstance for a certain perception, there are benefits, and there are, shall I say, not so much benefits. I don't know the other term of it. Like, there's advantages and disadvantages to how you're going to look at a circumstance. There's no such thing as absolutely good and absolutely bad. Each way you look at something is going to be beneficial in its own way. So if we're going to talk about perceiving love as a condition of action, of being, etc., what happens is the advantage, you will literally, you will be able to supposedly control yourself. Put an underline supposedly for me, please. Supposedly be in control of yourself, supposedly be in control of the other, and your life will be the safest thing ever. But you'll be the most boring thing you'll ever go through in your life. And at the same time, you will be going through states of stagnation, and you'll be in a scarce state of mind, because you won't be able to perceive a person as a multitude of optionality, a multitude of action, a multitude of things unperceivable. You don't give space to yourself to be surprised, to be excited, to feel that excitement. And that's because you are afraid of disappointment. And in this case, what can you do? Well, if you want to stay looking at love from that state of perception, be aware that you can't be, if you're going to stay with the same person, or you're going to have the same friends, or all that kind of thing, you are going to destroy them. And essentially destroy yourself in the process. And I don't mean destroy as in destruction of like physical destruction. No, I'm saying you are going to be very miserable, and you're going to cause the people that you value a lot of misery, because you are no longer a human being who does things to feel good. You've become a machine that is dependent on certain resources to be alive, to survive. There is no luxury of feeling good no more, unless you have are seen, or unless you are seen as a good person in the eye of the other. And that's not necessarily by being an ethical person, but rather by pleasing the other person. Okay? That's the first level of perception of love. The second perception of love is perceiving love as a fuel. Now you could perceive what I just said as a progression of the other. That the first level is perceiving love as, as, shall I say, a leash. I'll give you love if you do this for me, and all that kind of stuff. And we discussed earlier how this is elusive. The second aspect of that is, like the second progression, is perceiving love as a fuel. Okay, so now you know that you can't give love and you can't receive love. Okay, and you know this because you have been dependent on others' opinion to get that love, and when their love does not exist, or when they are in a bad mood, you have conditioned their state of love to a certain emotion, and thus confusing love with adoration. So you have noticed that, and now you realize that you need to get fueled up that you can do onto your life for whatever purpose that you have for your life, regardless of what purpose you've put for your life and was there for you, or whatever you're going to, in whatever shape or form you're going to perceive it. So when you perceive love as a fuel, you perceive love as a nourishment. Give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. You have to be, when you're around me, make sure to be happy. When you're around me, make sure to be smiling. When you're around me, make sure to please me. When you're around me, make sure that this work is fucking done perfectly. When you're around me, make sure. And you turn the people around you as resources of food, of nutrition. Because you realize you can't get their love anymore. Because you realize they weren't giving you love in the first place, they were sharing with you love, but you were blocking yourself due to trauma, due to disappointment, whatever your case is. So you decide that, okay, so basically I haven't been sharing love with people, so might as well use them as fuel. And then you use people as fuel, and you use people as some sort of this person is food for me, this person is food for me, person is food for me, and then we do emotional acts of cannibalism. And of course there's an advantage to that, and there's a big disadvantage to that, of course. The advantage to that is you're going to be very successful with your life. You're going to be very fucking successful. You are going to manifest all your goals. I'm being sincere here. You will end up, people who use people are very, very, very successful. We call them what was it called? Social climbers. Whatever we give them names, you can find them everywhere. They start out of nothing, and then they become something that's very huge, and you don't know where this happened. But you see a trail of wreckage of dead human beings sucked, their essence sucked out of them, and this man or this woman are just like raising their sword and winning. And the thing is, if you come to talk to that person, you'll see someone who's really hollow inside. And once they open up their mouth, you are just sucked inside of their mouth and you're no longer existent. But this is not to demonize a person or to demonize a state, but rather to state a state that we all go through. We all go through that state. It's about, and now you could realize, hopefully by what you're hearing right now, you could realize if you are in that state, is success worth the bleeding? Who are you bleeding dry in this circumstance? Okay, so, and are you bleeding yourself dry for this success? Now, and if you are bleeding yourself dry for this success, what can you do to give back to the people that you've sucked dry? Because as we said in last night's lesson, we discussed that it's not about being good or evil. It's about balancing your evil with enough good and balancing your good with enough evil. And a lot of people will be like, what do you mean by balancing your good with enough evil? And what I mean by that is balancing your pleasures out with pain. If you have a very pleasurable life, let's say for example you are you're happily with the person, the love of your life, and you have enough money to feed yourself and to feed, like you're very successful, and you are like you're living exactly the way you wanted to live. The reason why you don't feel happy, or you don't feel the happiness that is surrounding you, is because you have lost touch with suffering that allowed you to feel the desire to be around those people. And I don't mean German lessons. What can I say? I don't mean sadomasochism, like approaching the circumstance from a sadomasochistic way, where you are causing suffering to yourself and to the other so you can feel desire towards them. No, I mean simply just go to the fucking gym, run around, consciously suffer to make yourself better. And I don't mean to make yourself better in the sense better in the eyes of the other. No, I mean developed for your path and developed for the people that you to help the people that you value to live a luxurious, not necessarily luxurious, um, emotionally luxurious life, filled with all the beauties of emotional luxury. And I don't mean emotional luxury as the possessions, like a beautiful, an amazing car, and the Wolf of Wall Street kind of bullshit. No, I mean actually leading a life of emotional highs, of emotional joys. And this comes, of course, it doesn't mean that you become a junkie, because can get the emotional highs by becoming a junkie, a druggie, and you will get all the feelings that you want through drugs. Because at the end of the day, chemistry has done so good to destroy the self into simplicity, into chemicals that cause certain emotion at the certain time, a hormonal flux at the certain time, and all that kind of stuff. So really, if you want to have emotional highs and emotional joys and all that kind of stuff, you just could become a druggie, and you wouldn't have to work for your life. But at the end of the day, um, you are escaping a lot of places that you can discover in life. Now, if you are going to look at the circumstance, and here you would have noticed that I've spoken of the aspects of people being drained by the drainer, or shall I call him the vampire in this case, and how the drained react. The drained react by addictions, by looking for emotional highs, and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, balance your good with evil. Balance your pleasures with pains. And I'll leave the creative part of how you can do this on your own. Now, the third perception of love is perceiving love as an attachment. Now, you have evolved beyond seeing people as food. You have evolved beyond seeing people as a condition of action. And now you're ready to love someone, or to love your friends and the people you value, excuse me, for who they are. But in that state of mind, you're still in that place where you're like, what if, does that person really love me? Do I really love that person? And you start getting into gateways of obsession and possession. And then you get back to the earlier states, because you see, every time you take a step forward, there is another foot that's backward that needs to go forward. And as you experience the sensation on the foot that's coming forward, you experience the sensation on the foot that's going forward to it, and they're cycling towards progression. But in that progression, there's a feeling of regression, because you are going forward, but at the same time experiencing what you've experienced before. And your mind does not work in straight lines or in circles, it works in spirals, ever expanding and ever contracting at the same time. But more to that in other lessons in other days. Now, if we're going to talk about love as an attachment, love as an attachment, we will in this phase we would do whatever is necessary to keep the person the same. Even if they're happy, we'll be like, "Oh, why are you happy, motherfucker? What happened?" And then and then you'd be like, "Oh, but I'm," and then if they are happy and you're happy that they're happy, they'll be sad at some point, and they'll be like, "Oh, motherfucker, why are you sad?" You know, and you get into that state of, "Oh, I cannot predict you, then I can't love you." And in this case, what you're doing is, I am blocking myself from feeling love towards you because you're very unpredictable, so I can't feel secure around you. So how could you evolve beyond that point? And if you are, and before we say it's a bad point that we can evolve from it, let's talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of this perception of love. The advantages in this case, well, is very simple. You will hold a person stagnant in one area, and really what you're doing there, you're more stagnating your own self in this area. And when you are stagnating yourself in this area, what happens is that you are, "Oh, I'm not I am happy, I'm always happy. I'm sad, I'm always sad. And I can work with this, I can't work with that." And then you become having this inability to do your work in whatever state you are in, that you have to cultivate a certain state of mind so you can work in that state. And in this case, you are, what you're doing there is you going to, if what you introject on yourself as a process, you'll end up projecting as a process on the other. And if the other does not fit in that process, you won't feel safe to give them love. So what do? Because initially you want to love that person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be working, or you wouldn't be actually, how can I put this into words? You wouldn't be going through conversations with them in the first place. You wouldn't be loving them in the first place. But what I'm trying to say here, because I'm getting confused a little bit, pardon me, is when you're dealing is the advantage, sorry, we were talking, yes, the advantage of perceiving love as an attachment is that you will have this person and you will have some sort of guarantee that this person is going to stay in your life no matter how you are or no matter what you do. And this is that's the advantage. The disadvantage of that is that you're not truly in love. What you're truly in is in safety. What you're truly is in a conditioned state of security where you will have whatever what you want. But it will be tasteless, and it will develop into addiction, into many forms of addiction. So initially, from the state, we realize that love is something more than I'm going to give it to you or you're going to give it to me. You know, it's more than that. And what I mean by it's more than that is that I'm going to open up to you and you're going to open up to me in whatever condition we are in. And thus we progress or we evolve into the next stage, which is perceiving love as a mutual connection. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you say perceiving love as mutual connection is, and that's a lot of people fall off the stage really, by actually falling for people who essentially they don't love them, and they because they are used to giving love, or they are used to feeling secure to open up for love. Because you see, you don't, as I said, you don't give love, you don't take love, you open up for love. In this, once you get to this level of progression, you realize that you open up for love rather than to actually give or take it. and you have to feel secure to open up to that love. And up until this level, you are dependent on on other elements in the circumstance to make you feel secure to open up to that love, which is okay. However, you have to bear in mind during those progressions, it would be better and it would be more beneficial for you to open up to love without elements in the circumstance, even if the elements in the circumstance are scarce, because you won't be always rich, because you won't always be and you might be maybe you're one of those lucky motherfuckers who will always be rich, having money every day. Maybe you'll be one of those lucky motherfuckers, just without envy from my side, really. Pardon my envy. The point is that you will get to a certain level where you realize that you have to feel secure to open up for love to pass through. And in that stage, people will come into your life until you find that personal ground of security that, shall I say, are not so interested in you. And you will be like, but they are there because they consider they are interested in you, but they are how can I put this into words? They don't want to fully open up for love with you because you don't want to open up fully for love with them. So it becomes kind of like it's like a reversal. Like you reach this state where perceiving love as a mutual connection, and then okay, so we have a mutual connection or we don't have a mutual connection, that kind of thing. And then when you have a mutual connection, be it as friendship or love or a sexual relationship or whatever you're going to call it, or whatever state you are in, if you have a if you're perceiving love as a mutual connection, this is a tricky circumstance, because you might assume that this mutual connection is because of who you are, or because of who they are, or because of your preference and of their preference. And in that, you are going back, you're regressing to perceiving love as an attachment. Because you're saying that I will only love you if you are that person in my preferences. And you will only love me if you are that person in my preferences. And in this case, you are regressing back to perceiving love as a fuel. And then you're regressing even further to perceiving love as a condition of action. So, and bear in mind, as I said earlier, one foot takes a step and the other senses the step afterwards, and we keep in this progression of motion. So once you perceive love as a mutual connection, the thing is, those perceptions work together in the state of love as an internal and external process. But before we go into that level, let's talk about perceiving love as a mutual connection. Perceiving love as a mutual connection is that you perceive that there's a connection between you and a person, and you in that connection, you'd see that there's spontaneity to do stuff between you guys. We've all been in love with one way or another, and we know what we're talking about. Even if no one told you I love you in your life, you've been in love with someone, and you know what I'm talking about when I say spontaneity and all that kind of stuff. So once you perceive love as a mutual connection, you perceive there's the advantages and disadvantages, of course. The advantages of perceiving love as a mutual connection is that you are starting to realize that love is impersonal. That love has nothing to do with you and nothing to do with the other person, and you're starting to understand that you start to open up to the aspect or the perception of gratitude to having love in your life, rather than it being a necessity, rather than it being a need, rather than it being all of the things that deplete us deplete us of of sharing love is a pleasure. So you have perceived now you have the disadvantage of mutual connection, of course, is foolishness, is utter foolishness and utter surrender. We'll do whatever is necessary to make this work. We'll destroy the whole world to make this world. You know, and it's cool. There's nothing wrong with that, really. I personally am up for all of that, and I wouldn't consider it a disadvantage in my own opinion because I would do that. Um, but can you take responsibility for that? You see, a disadvantage is only a disadvantage if you can't take responsibility for it. Now, once you have taken responsibility for the mutual connection and you said, yes, there is a lot for us to do to maintain what we have together and to develop it, and it's worth this, like, for example, if it's because I don't want to really just focus on relationships. I want to focus as well on friendships, on family, all that beautiful stuff. So you realize that the love between you and someone is mutual. There's a mutual connection. And you guys have to do something to balance, like you have to balance things out so you can allow yourselves the security for the emotional flow of love. Bearing in mind to work on the inner security while you're working on the external extremities of security, or the external limbs of security. Because if there is no sockets for the arm to latch on, the arm will fall off. And this is where we learn perceiving love as an internal and an external process. Now, of course, a lot of people will be like, yes, love is just chemical oxytocin, the hormone that allows women to eases the birthing process of the woman and all that kind of stuff. Cool. But where is your poetry, motherfucker? Stay in poetry. Leave science to science and love to love. Don't mix both. Don't mix science and love, otherwise you'll feel a lot disappointed. Because when you mix science with love, what you're doing there is you are trying to condition it again. Now, perceiving love as a source of... Before we say that, perceiving love as an internal or external process. Sorry. When you perceive love as an internal process or external process, you are perceiving love as something that occurs. It's an occurrence. And it's an occurrence that happens inside of you and outside of you. And when it's happening, if you're asking yourself, do I love that person? Or am I in love with that person? You are actually seeing that process happening. You are feeling that process happening. But you are asking questions to confuse yourself because this feeling is very intense. And believe me, if you intone yourself with the process of love, you'd be very fascinated with how intense it is. And the connection, how this connection is, you'd be fascinated at how this connection is so overwhelming. And that's why if you don't trust yourself at that moment, forget about trusting the other in this case, just trust yourself. If you don't trust yourself in times of intense love, you won't feel it. And that has nothing to do with whether you love that person or not, but you will do everything possible to deny yourself that pleasure because you are afraid of being disappointed. You are afraid of actually opening up to a person, and you're not afraid of being disappointed by that person, but you are afraid of being disappointed by yourself around that person. And how could you overcome that insecurity as an internal process? Figure out what you always fuck up in and don't fuck it up. Simple as that. Does that mean you obsessively focus on what you fuck up so you don't do it? It's like, don't scratch your hair. You'll end up scratching your hair. Focus on maintaining aspects in your life that doesn't allow you to fall into that fuckery, doesn't allow you to fuck up this prospect, this perspective, you know. That's on the internal and the external process. And a lot of people will be like, but that's the way of fear, is that you don't want to be in circumstances that cause you to fuck up circumstances. No, be in those circumstances. Hell, what are you most afraid of that will derail you from from your loyalty, from whatever it is? Don't go running after it. Don't be a dumbass. But if it comes to you out of circumstance, if there's something that you need to work on, and this comes up to you, work on it. Oh, but I don't trust myself. No, it's not you who doesn't trust himself. It is not the other person who doesn't trust you. It is this susceptibility that has been planted in you since you're a kid that you cannot trust yourself on your own. Oh, don't go there on your own, you'll get lost. Don't do this on your own, you'll get electrocuted. And this was a way of protecting you, really. And your system sometimes will mother you and father you to protect you from outside circumstances. Don't do this on your own, don't do this on your own, don't do this on your own. And then on the long run, what happens is that you become united with your parents, and then in a very unhealthy way. Because union is essentially healthy unless you do it in an extreme fact that you have no self in the process. And yes, there is a part of pleasure, as I explained before, where the self is eliminated, but at the same time, how long does it take you to rejuvenate to make that self back again? You know? Now, in the sixth aspect is perceiving love as a source of action of good. And this is the problematic excuse of religion. In religion, they say God is love. In religions, they say love. Essentially, they portrayed God as this entity that, if you don't love, will smite you, will take you to hell, and will destroy you, and all that kind of thing. To me, that's just an image of a spoiled brat, not a God of love, but rather a demented, spoiled brat. And it would be very sad for people to see God as that, because what they're doing there is they're projecting the worst self and just giving it the sun to shine outwards. And it's like, and in that, this is not an acceptance of in that there's no acceptance of shall I say, the worst self. Well, there's no such thing as the worst self, but the self that is most afraid of circumstance, and give it all power. Because really, if you are really afraid, you'll be very vigilant, and you will return back to the first level that we spoke of perception of love as a condition of action. So you realize that love in itself, in this, you perceive love as a source of action, because basically this is superseded by perceiving love as an internal or external process. So you work on yourself to feel that love. But then you'll be like, yes, I feel love, but if I feel love for a person or for a certain condition, whatever it is you feel love to, what good does it do me other than the feeling? I want material proof. And in this case, if it's a woman, or if it's a man, if it's just a relationship or whatever it is, the proof is simple. The acts of kindness, sex, all of those things. the proofs of surrendering. But it's not surrendering to your will. So essentially what is happening there is that you're perceiving love as, okay, so I'm in love, so I should be a good person. So, and this is, you are being conditioned by society in this circumstance that if you have reached to that state of where you are so secure that you can open up to love, then you owe society to be good to them. Regardless of this society being a good society in the first place to you or not. Regardless of, and then it becomes a state, love becomes a state of false righteousness. Because essentially in in history, when in clan and tribal mentality, the ones who feel love or are secure enough to feel love in its entirety were the ones who are the most secure in the tribe. Now, a lot of people would think that the most secure in the tribe are the ones who are the rulers of the tribe. Actually, the opposite. People would think if they are the richest people, they are the ones in love. Actually, the opposite. And why is that? Because love, as I said, the materialization of love, being it through acts of kindness, and acts of kindness can take financial terms sometimes, and acts of emotional luxury exteriorized can be externalized in the form of jewelry, of presents, and all that kind of stuff. But then love becomes money. And in that, we quickly regress into the first state that we talk about, which is perceiving love as a condition of action or a being. And in this case, we consider it a condition of, we consider it payment. And in this we can call this emotional prostitution. And in this we can call it emotional prostitution. And emotional prostitution is when kindness no longer becomes a pleasure, but rather an obligation for a payment of security. So how could you be kind without expecting a form of security? Is be kind when the people when you know that there's a pleasure from kindness. And that requires you to open up again to love, to feeling love. If you are going to give kindness to someone, expect that you are going to feel good because you gave them kindness. And in order to fucking bypass that is ask for help when you need it. Because if you don't ask for help when you need it, what happens there is that you are taking the state of superiority. I give you love because I am amazing. I give you love because I'm superior to you. And that takes you back to the first state, to the state of perceiving love as an attachment. Because if I find something to attach you to me, because I am good at this, good at that, good at this, and good at that, and then start understanding that love has to do with my personality and has to do with the other's personality, or are actually what's it called, the preference, sorry about that, this leads us to a state of this, as I said, leads us to a state of realizing love as an attachment. So now you perceive love as a source of action. regardless of it being good or evil. You just perceive it as a source of action, and then you realize that no, I don't want to perceive it as a source of action. I just want to perceive it as a game in itself, full of actions and full of surprises. And in this state, you get to this area where you see that love is not only about being good and kind to a person, it as well involves being a bit evil to that person. And at the same time, it involves being good and evil at the same time with balance. And we can be like, no, but I don't want to make the person around me suffer. Trust me, you make them suffer. And they make you suffer. And that's the beauty of it. When you call your lover my beautiful suffering, that is not because they are... you, in this case, admit to the fact that in love there is suffering as much as there is pleasure, otherwise there wouldn't be pleasure. And then you understand that that love is both good and evil, and it's your job to balance the state that you're in as a state of being, so you don't do excessively evil shit to keep this love there, and you don't do excessively good shit to keep this love there. You keep things balanced, so you can feel secure to feel love as much as possible. You see, because here I'm not telling you to be a good person or a bad person. What I'm telling you here is, and telling myself, is how can you open up to love? And love could get very intense, and the more intense it gets, the more scared you will be. And the more scared you will be, the more you're going to confuse yourself and to prevent yourself from the intensity of love, because the more intense it becomes, the less aware you will become of it. Now, once you realize that, and you realize that love is no longer about good or evil, and it's just a game in itself, and you are playing this game because it's a joyful thing to play, and you realize that there's no winner or loser in this circumstance, because the lover and the beloved start playing this game, or shall I say the lovers in this game the lovers in this case play this game of saying I love you and I love you back, but in action and in verbally and physically and emotionally. Now you progress onto the 8th level, which is realizing love as a force that works by its own accord, as a being on its own that we share that we share energy to. Because when we do that, that's when we feel love. Thus, love as a product rather than a source of grandiose worship. And in this state, you reach to a certain level where you realize that, oh, so love is a state of being that works on its own accord. And the more you give love, love comes in sharing with the both of you, with the partners, with the lovers. And once you do that, you go into the poetic sense of love, of realizing love as an internal and an external process, where the internal and the external process work together, and the lovers work together and give kindness unto each other, so they can not to increase love, but to give it to love itself as a being, and without expectation. What are you doing there is you are producing love. You are generating love. Producing sounds contradictory to what I said earlier, so it's more of generating or giving energy to love. And actually, you're not giving energy, you are just transmuting energies from your fears, from your bad experiences, and all that. And we've spoken about that in earlier posts, how to generate those feelings. So, this was a very long one, actually. I feel in need of drinking juices now. This is Idris Sunusi from INSA Arts and Crafts. May no order hinder you, and may chaos be your authority. In love, for love. I love you guys.